Aloha and welcome back to another video. I don't have as much to share this time as I did before, but I still have a lot to talk about because in these videos I'd like to also be talking about issues I got prior. So let's start out with that. The next Batman, issue 1. I'm liking it, but ultimately it's just not it's not good enough to justify the price, if I'm being honest. $8 for 3 different stories sounds good if those stories are worth it, but the first one, being the next Batman, is really the only one that's worth reading, and even then it's only like cliff notes to what the future state the next Batman story could actually be. It just it's an opening premise. It introduces you to some characters, these different people that are in lawyer and legislative roles, basically, and help influence what goes on in the city. And you get some perspectives of these different gangs that are forming out of basically the chaos of a totalitarian regime that controlled Gotham City. And of course you jump back to Batman, of course, that is trying to stop it all and piece it all together and figure out a different strain of murders, basically, and trying to figure out how to stop the chaos. There's these foot soldiers that gun down any masked vigilantes. There's like a curfew and a bunch of other things that are employed. It's almost like the whole city's in a state of emergency style thing. It's very post-apocalyptic, or not post-apocalyptic, but dystopian, I should say. And it's good, but it's only, what, a third of the book? So that's my main problem. The next story up here, it doesn't really make a ton of sense for me, and it follows a bunch of different characters that are part of a different resistance group, and these different stories all kind of start to piece together this kind of image, this kind of painting of future state's Gotham City, but it's called The Outsiders, but it's too confusing, in my opinion. The first story wasn't, but this story and the story after this, the second and third story in this issue I'm going to be covering, just doesn't make much sense. She's part of the Outsiders, and they have this other resistance kind of group that is filled with superheroes as well, and they're the bad guys, and they're trying to like take control of part of the city. I think it was really hard to follow, honestly. The best part is what you're looking at right now, believe it or not. This splash page isn't actually read left to right and down. It's read as if it's like one big page. So it's like left to right, and then left to right you continually go down here. And I didn't even know that at first, but it's really cool. And the art here is the art throughout is pretty decent. It does its job well, but specifically the like fight choreography that you see throughout this, and just kind of seeing it progress is quite cool. You got cool uses of color there in the stairwell, and you get different sides of, one side being the foot soldiers, and the other side being that katana woman. I forget her name. I don't really care enough to, remember, but that's no big deal. The main thing I just wanted to emphasize was that it's just not my thing. It's too confusing. These characters must have existed in some form prior to this book, I imagine. If not, then it's just bad writing. But even if they did exist in a prior, series that I haven't read, that I don't know about, there still should be some kind of brief explanation of some sort that would allow me to understand what's going on, right? A comic author can't just rely on, or writer can't rely on past issues and past knowledge to craft the entire story. They can have a story that piggybacks off of other people's work or their work prior, but they can't have it, a good author would have it where there's a good writer would have it where there's, some kind of small text box that explains little details that might not make sense. They would write it in ways and craft the story in ways that would be both approachable to newcomers and people from the past. And the person that wrote this just didn't do that. And also, these stories, as far as I know, are written by different people, so that kind of might have something to do with it. It might be kind of segregated, or a little too, you could say the different stories are a little too different from one another, that they take place in the same city and they kind of help craft a vision of what future Gotham is like, but in terms of writing and art and such, you could say they're a little too different from one another. This is Gotham Knights, and this one was better than the second one I just showed you, but it still wasn't great. I liked the writing, but the action kind of felt hollow because ultimately I wasn't really given reasons to care about the characters much. But the one interesting thing to note is the characters are actually, at least more interesting than the characters in the story that I just showed. But they have different interesting kind of attributes and things. He, for example, is in constant pain. He has some kind of, mutant condition thing that causes him to be in like agonizing pain as if his skin is like burning. So that's pretty gnarly, pretty metal. But other than that, it wasn't spectacular, it wasn't bad. But a lot of these other stories besides the main that I'll also be showing off in the next Batman issue 2, a lot of these couldn't really be sold on their own. They kind of feel like filler. Not so much in the next issue though, which I'll show off right now. The next Batman issue 2 is really what the next Batman issue 1 should have been. I'd say it's probably worth the money. It's worth picking up, and that's the thing, because you kind of got to pick up the first issue that I just showed to understand, the main Batman story here. So that's kind of the problem, right? But this is worth reading, I'd say. It's the Batman story progresses exactly how you'd expect. He continues to piece together these murders and is investigating different scenes, and he really feels like he has one hand tied behind his back, in the sense that all of the technology he uses is being tracked, and these foot soldiers are, heavily armed, and there's tons of them, and, he counts down the seconds until they get to his location. They're like, okay, they've tracked my location, and they'll get to me in like 90 seconds. I gotta get out of here, that kind of thing. And it really can get kind of tense, but then it'll shift back over to these, are they lawyers? They're basically, they're working with legislators and trying to fight these normal people are feeling as if the overall city and the lawmakers and that are allowing all this are corrupt, and they're all kind of trying to stop it. Even the people within the system that have at least some say, even they don't like it. Here we have who actually the next Batman is. It's not actually Bruce Wayne, interestingly enough, but it's not exactly explained. I wonder if how he became Batman, this new Batman, and all the details surrounding it. I don't know if it was explained in something prior, death metal or something that I didn't understand. I don't know, or that I didn't read, or if it'll be explained later in a future the next Batman issue. There's 2 more after this, so I guess we'll wait and see. And yeah, that's about it. He's piecing together what's going on, and these other gangs there's a lot more humanity put in these other gangs, and there's different commentaries about police brutality and stuff, and the whole thing about a city that's overran with chaos, and different gangs that are trying to use the chaos of the city as their advantage, basically, to take control of it, and police brutality and all that kind of stuff really ties in almost to what's been going on recently in our real world. So that's kind of cool to see, and overall it was good. What's also good, though, is this next second story. Unlike before, this second story, Batgirls, is actually pretty good as well and worth reading. Doesn't feel as much like filler, even though, to be honest, if it was sold on its own, I don't know exactly if I'd pick it up. But it's cool and helps paint the larger picture of Gotham City. You get to see what things are like from the inside, from a criminal perspective. Some of these aren't criminals. Some of them are actually like spies, and that they purposely got themselves arrested to be on the inside and try and basically take down the system from within the walls of, a jail. And that's kind of cool to see. And there's good dialogue. The dialogue really in this story is really the highlight for me. The art I'm not actually crazy about. As you can see, it's all personal, but I think it's a little too cartoony for me, not detailed enough, and ultimately the color palette can be kind of bland, but it makes up for it in the story and the overall kind of message and world that it's painting. I'm kind of almost sad that we'll see. Maybe things will go down again. Maybe the next Batman issue 3 and 4 won't be as good. But if things continue to be this good, I'm almost gonna kind of be sad that it's only going to be 4 issues. It seems like there's a lot more to tell in this world, but we'll see. We'll see how things end up. Gotham City Sirens. This was definitely the least interesting story of this issue. It wasn't bad. It was definitely, all 3 of these are better than any of the stories in issue 1, in my opinion. I really liked, I enjoyed all 3 of these, even though this one is the weakest of this issue. It's better than anything. It's better than the 2 other stories. Excuse me, the 2 other stories in issue 1 of the next Batman. It's decent. You follow these different female DC characters and their perspective on what's going on. It's mostly just kind of, it's more comedy, to be honest. They find this droid that was just an experiment, and they pick her up and promise her that if she gives them information about what's going on with the city, that they'll take her on a girls' night out. I'm not making this up. And that's what they do. Some crap hits the fan, though, towards the end, and as you can see, things don't go so well. And it'll continue in the next Batman issue 4. I don't know if I'll really care too much, but it wasn't the worst. Next up, though, we have switching over to some pickups. I picked up Daredevil issue 17. I've actually read this before through Marvel Unlimited, already read it, and this is, I don't know if you guys remember if you saw the last video that I did, but last video, right? Last pulls and pickups video I did, when I showed off a Daredevil issue, I talked about how the artists keep flip-flopping, and this is the artist that I don't like his art as much. He did this one, but I forget his name. But it's not bad. Mainly, though, the story in all these issues are just great, and this issue picks up after Elektra and him stole a huge sum of money from these rich philanthropists, and named the Stormwinds. And he attends one of their parties and is basically questioning them as to how he knows they're bad, but how responsible are they for what's going on in Hell's Kitchen, and what exactly is their motive? Well, that's what he's figures out, and it's mostly, I guess, in my head, I think of these kind of issues as cleaning house. It's a good issue for sure, but there's not a lot to talk about until I actually do a video covering the entire series. I'm just going to tell you, if you want to hop into the series, now is the perfect time. The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to hop in, because of how many issues are coming out, once a month, and we're only on issue 26 now. So if you want to hop in now. It's definitely worth reading. I don't want to spoil too much. Every time I pick up one of these issues, it's hard for me not to want to talk about it, but I also don't want to spoil too much in these kind of videos. I have an actual video dedicated to Daredevil that's going to be coming up. I have the footage that's shot and everything. It's just writing the script is kind of the difficult part, but yeah, hop in now if you're gonna read it, because it's fantastic. From the series that I've been reading since I hopped back into comics about 3-4 months ago, this is by far the best thing I've been reading. This is when things really get good. Cole North, a cop that originally was the cop that apprehended Daredevil, was attempting to apprehend Daredevil now is, you know, going towards the good side of the law and going against his orders, but is seeing how corrupt the police force actually is, and actually is working with Daredevil here to apprehend a perp. And they're both basically feeling the fallout of choices that the Owl and his mob has been doing. He capping off and killing the different leaders of Hell's Kitchen. And everybody's really feeling the consequences, and things are really, you know, climaxing to this like boiling point, right? And I'm not going to flip the page because there's a major spoiler here, but you'll get more plot details, and I'll go over the whole series eventually at one point. Last week I talked about going over releasing the video this week. It's not going to come out this week. Definitely not going to come out this week. I don't know even about next week, the week after that, but just look forward to it. Eventually, I will cover the whole series in some form. It's just, I don't want to promise a date. I really don't. This issue was great as well. This is issue 25. This is jumping ahead quite a bit, but it's, you know, flipping through this, seeing him in prison, is that like spoilers? You could say it's spoilers, but at the same time, on the cover, not on this cover, because this is a variant cover, but on the original cover, I mean, it shows him behind bars. I mean, if you're on Marvel Unlimited or you're looking at upcoming Marvel issues, there's no way you won't know that he ends up in prison, because you've seen it for the past, you know, months now. You've seen the cover, you know, of that issue. So anyway, so he ends up in prison for reasons I'm not going to say, and basically he turns himself in for what he does at the very beginning of this series, and has to get out because crap's happening outside of the city, and he has to protect it. Basically, that's all I'm going to say. I don't know. Well, what am I supposed to say? It's next up. Finally, I got issue 26. It just came out last week. This I haven't actually read yet, but yeah. And that'll be it. I don't want to flip forward too much. And that's that. Thank you very much for watching. This one's longer than I expected it to be, but hopefully you like it anyways. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Aloha.